Yah's house is going to be all right. We welcome everyone on today. We had the blowing of the shofar through Akoti Walsh. We also had our prayer already. So we are thankful unto Abba Yahuwah. We say Todah unto him for allowing us to be here and to be back into the house, the physical house, and to be in the midst of the Mishpacha, and even in my travels and being with my family, which is a part of the Mishpacha, family under one covenant. And so I say Shalom, Shalom to all of those who are listening in. We welcome you from Osceola, Iowa. Samuel Porter, his Isha, and John Rabarkic and his Isha. And we welcome those who are joining in from across the country. Some of them will be watching this at their convenience, probably later on. Right now it's 5:36 out on the West Coast. And so they'll probably be joining in a little later or at their convenience. Then we have some on the East Coast that will probably be watching it in the morning. But whenever you watch it, morning, noon, or night, we say shalom, shalom to you. And just come on in to Yah's house. It's going to be all right. All of those who have asked for prayer requests, we're certainly praying for them. Zakin Sauls, the prayers are going up for him. And had a successful procedure with Akoti Gerard. And we say shalom to her and praise Yah for his healing hand. We also have others that we pray for healing. Damien McNeil, Akoti Joy Stewart. And a shout out to them on tonight. You're constantly in our prayers, rising up early in the morning to pray and try to get everybody in that prayer, everybody in the house of Yah, everybody in my house and in my Father's house. So we offer up those prayers every morning and try to visualize that prayer list that we have to keep everybody in prayer. It's needful for us to pray. It's also needful for us to lift up one another, to help one another, to reciprocate the greetings, the love, and the compassion that we show. I was as I shared with you in our Telegram app, and I'll be doing a little bit more of that. And forgive me, I didn't want to be on there an hour. Like last time, it was an hour long. I didn't really intend to be on there an hour. Just want to make real quick video calls because what Yah gives me, I want to be able to pour it out and pour it into you so that you can receive what Yah is given unto me. So those who are in the Telegram app, and we've added some, and there's going to be others coming in. So House of Yah, when we have others coming in, show your hospitality, greet them, and welcome them into the House of Yah Telegram app. There'll be other communications that'll be going out in that app. And I might just, when Yah drops something on me in my spirit and I'm meditating on it, I might just do a video and might not post it live, but I'll just post it up there on the app, and you can drop it down at your leisure when you have time to. So welcome everybody. Last time I taught on the Shabbat or on the Wednesday Torah class, we were talking about the curses, and you have to realize and understand that there's more than one curse. If anybody thinks that there's just one curse, and we'll look at what Paul was saying here in Galatians, because a lot of people like to use Galatians and say, we're not under the curse. If you're under the curse, then you're not saved, in their definition of saved and salvation. And when people say that, they say that because several reasons, but one of the reasons why they say that is because they're not fully informed. They're still yet at the very early baby steps of their journey with Abba Yahuwah, because there's more than one curse. In the Torah, and I know a lot of people do not read Torah. There's certain religions that do not go to Torah and read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those are the instructions of Abba Yahuwah. Everything, and we'll look at some things that Paul talked about here in Galatians, but you have to have and grasp a good understanding of the book of Genesis to know what Shaul's even talking about here in Galatians. But because people fail to go back to Genesis and read Genesis, when they read what Shaul says here in Galatians, they think that it's all lumped together under one law or under one curse, and it's not. And we're also going to see in this passage of scripture that I'm going to read, you're going to have to see, and I might even do a little exercise tonight, but you're going to have to see, and when we get down to verse number 16, what exactly is he referring to? Because you can't just lump it all together like we have the tendency to do a lot of times, because that's the easy way out. The easy way out is just to lump it all together and instead of being able to break it down and go line by line, because that's what he said in Isaiah in the prophecy, right? When he said in the 28th chapter, he said it's going to be line upon line, line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. That's how he's going to speak to us. And that's how you build doctrine. That's how you teach doctrine. You don't teach a doctrine by taking one verse. I'm going to take one verse. I'm going to take St. John, Yahuchanan, 3:16, one verse, and I'm going to build a whole doctrine off. You can't do that. A student of Torah, a student of this book who has the Ruach HaKodesh, understands that you cannot take one verse and build a doctrine. You have to have at least, what? 2 to 3 witnesses. That's law. That's law. You have to have at least 2 or 3 witnesses. So anybody that goes through the book of Galatians without going back to the Torah and understanding what Shaul is talking about, they don't have 2 or 3 witnesses. They're just going to try to lump everything together because that's the easy way out, and it's the broad way. When Yahusha said, broad is the way and wide is the gate that leadeth to destruction, and there be many that go in thereat, he's talking about a religion. He's talking about religion. And the 3 dominant religions in the world today is Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Judaism is not as big as Hinduism. There's more people who are in Hinduism than there is Judaism, but those are the 3 powerful religions of the world. It's Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And Yahusha said, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leadeth to life everlasting, and only a few are going to find it. Notice what he says. A few will find it. In his Beatitudes, or the Sermon on the Sermon on the Mount, in the Beatitude, what we call the Beatitudes, what did he say about finding? What did he say about finding? Those who find something. What did he say? They have to do what? Those who find something, what do they have to do? They have to seek first. You have to seek. Otherwise, you ain't going to find nothing. If you're not seeking, you're not going to find anything. Oh, I'm going to stumble upon something. It don't work that way. He says only a few find it because only a few are seeking that straight and narrow way. It's not a broad way. It's a straight and narrow way that leadeth to life everlasting. So we want to find that straight and narrow way, the way of Yahuwah, the way of Yahusha. Yahusha said, I am the way. So if you want to find that straight and narrow way, then you got to look to Yahusha. All right? So in Galatians 3 and 10, we're going to read this. I think this is where I left off. I'm just, if somebody can remind me. This is not really a recapitulation. I'm just going to just pick it up here. We'll just go in at this. For as many, this is Galatians 3 and 10, for as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. Now, when people read this, they immediately say that we're not under a curse, right? And why would they say they're not under a curse? Anybody interactive here? Why would they say we're not under a curse? Right. That's what it says here. I'm not under the curse because Yahusha died for us. I mean, he died, and he took the place of me, so I'm not under that curse. And so therefore, since I'm not under the curse, I'm not what? I'm not under the law. That's what they say. Since Yahusha became a curse for me, because curses, like I read here, curses everyone that continueth not in all things written in the book of the law to do them. So then, if I'm under the law, I'm cursed. But if Yahusha died for me and became a curse for me, then I'm no longer under the curse of the law. So I'm no under the law. I'm no longer under the law. And that's how they interpret this passage of scripture here. But they're interpreting it, the interpretation of that is through what we call the seminary, the post-apostolic fathers, Matthew Henry, all these commentaries. That's where they get this from, because if you go back to find out what he's talking about here, you'll find out that there's a lot of different curses. So where are we going to find this? Well, let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 27 and verse number 26. Now, if you look at chapter 27 and 28, you're going to find multiple curses. Deuteronomy 27, Deuteronomy 28, you're going to find multiple curses. But the one that Shaul was talking about in Galatians 3 and 10, he was talking about Deuteronomy 27 and 26, cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of this law to do them. And all the people shall say, Amen. So this is where Shaul got that from. He says, if you don't confirm or do everything in the law, then you're cursed. He's referring to this. And if you read up, if you start to go up in this chapter and starting at verse number 14, and the Levites shall speak and say unto all the men of Yasharel with a loud voice. Now he starts listing all these curses. He starts listing all these curses. So you have to go through these verses here all the way down. We're not going to read all of them because we don't have time, but go all the way down to verse number 25. And then verse 26, he says, okay, now if you don't confirm all the words of this law to do them, this is the curse. Those curses that because if you read those curses, a lot of those curses are the commandments and in what the Levites were supposed to teach. So he's saying, in order to avoid the curse of the law, then you have to confirm everything in the law. And if you can't confirm, or if you cannot commit or observe everything in the law, then you're cursed. You're cursed. Does that make sense so far? Does that make sense so far, right? And this is what Shaul is speaking about. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of them. But then if you go to chapter 28, the very next chapter, starting at verse, and before you can go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 and down, you have to understand that what he is talking about here in 27, going down to the last verse here, you'll find these things in the teaching of Exodus and Leviticus. The teachings of Exodus and Leviticus. So then you go to Deuteronomy 28, and you start at verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah thy Elohah, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Now you're starting to get into different kinds of curses. These are not the same curses. If you read the curses in 27, it's not the same curses. So he starts to deal with some other curses now. The point that I'm trying to make is when you read Galatians 3 and 10, what Shaul is talking about, you have to understand where he gets it from and what he's referring to and what he's talking about. And you got to be able to break it down line by line and precept by precept. If anybody comes to you and tells you that if you're under the law, you're cursed, and the Mashiach died for us so that we don't have to be accursed by being under the law, that's true, but that's not all the curses. You have to go read on into chapter 28 and start to look at the other curses, because that's what they failed to do. I have a book upstairs in my office, in my small library. I have a book, and it's over Deuteronomy, because I was asked by a gentleman. He used to come here on Shabbats. He doesn't come here anymore. I forget his name. Yes. So he wanted to give me a gift. And so he said, what do you, I want to give you a gift. And I said, well, a book on, I said, a Hebrew commentary on the book of Deuteronomy. So he bought me a book on Deuteronomy and everything, and I refer to it on occasions. In that book that I have upstairs in my office, when it gets to Deuteronomy 28:15 down to 68, and I could actually bring it down here and open it to you and show you, the commentary says absolutely nothing. I mean, because when I looked at the book, I was like, oh man, I got a book, I can study it and everything, look through this. He says absolutely nothing about the curses of Deuteronomy 28. And I thought, wow, how could you leave? How could you just leave that out? You have all the commentary of the book of Deuteronomy, but when it comes to the chapter 28 and all these curses, there's no commentary on it. These are different types of curses that he puts on the children of Yasharel. And one of the curses, if you go down here and you read, there's a number of curses that he talks about that Yasharel is still under. Even though the Mashiach came and died for us, when we read Deuteronomy 27 and 26, everything that's written in the law, you have to confirm it and keep it. Well, I can't keep everything that's written in the law. That's why Yah sent his son, and he gave his life for us, and he became a curse, because we can't fulfill everything that's written in the law letter by letter, line by line. We can't be here doing it. There's things that we cannot do to fulfill everything. So what we can fulfill and what we can keep, that's what we do. We can keep the 10 Commandments, because if you go back into Deuteronomy 27, you start reading some of those curses, he gets it right out of the 10 Commandments. Some of them he just gets right out of the 10 Commandments. There's things we can do to keep his law and his statutes and his commands. But then there's other things that is written that we might not be able to keep. But because I can't keep it, I'm not bound to that curse when you talk about Deuteronomy 27:26. That does not free me from the curses in Deuteronomy 28. And so when you look at Deuteronomy 28, and then you go down to, I'm not going to read all these because it's lengthy and we don't have time, but you go down to verse number 36. Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king which thou shalt set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other Elohim, wood and stone. Now that's not a part of the Levitical teaching that they got from Mount Sinai. Because the closest thing to that, wood and stone, what he's talking about, the closest, anybody know what's the closest thing to that? Yeah, that he gave us on Mount Sinai. Yeah, and what was the first one? Thou shalt not have no other Elohim before me. You don't have no other Elohim before me. That's number one. That's the very first one. Thou shalt not have no other Elohim before me. But when he scattered Yasharel, he said, upon you being scattered, going to all these nations, you're going to serve wood and stone, which is contrary to the very first commandment. So when you look at wood and stone is a curse. That's a curse on his people. And a lot, I should say, I say a lot, but there's a great number of Yasharel that's scattered to the four corners, that's under wood and stone, that's not going to make it out. They're not going to make it out because the command was to come out from among them and be ye separate. Even Shaul picks that up in 1 Corinthians, 6th chapter. He says, come out from among, be separate. And 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. You have to come out from among them. You have to be separate from them. And then that's when I'm going to receive you. So the curse of wood and stone, but not only was it given here, it was given in prophecy that Yasharel was going to be under that curse of wood and stone. In the same chapter, you go down to verse number 64. Go down to 64, and Yahuwah shall scatter thee among the people. And as soon as you get scattered among the people, from one end of the earth unto the other, you cannot keep every letter of the law when you get scattered to the four corners. Oh, then we're cursed. Oh, no, don't worry about that. Because Yahusha died for you. Because you can't fulfill it to the T. And there's other things I'm going to say about that, but since you can't, he died for you to release you from Deuteronomy 27:26. Because you can't confirm everything in the law. We're scattered to the four corners. That was a judgment on Yasharel because they broke the 10 commandments. They broke that covenant. So that was a judgment on them. So when you look at Deuteronomy 28, this is the judgment on Yasharel. So he says, and Yahuwah shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other Elohim, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. Back in that day, they didn't know anything about Islam or Christianity. They didn't know anything about it. And he even tells them, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, wood and stone. They didn't know anything about it, but he says, that's what you're going to serve. You're going to serve other Elohim. And so when you look at what is going on today and what's transpiring today, because we're coming up to the end. We're coming up to the end of the age. Don't know exactly how much time that we have left, but we are definitely coming to the end of the age. And you know what? A lot of people feel it. It's in the air. It's in people's ruachs. It's in your ruach. People can feel that we're coming up to an end. A lot of prophecy is being fulfilled through Yasharel. When you look at Ezekiel 37, the valley of dry bones, that's a prophecy. And you're starting to see Yasharel wake up worldwide, because it's prophecy. And the ones who are, it's sad to say, but the ones who are standing in the way trying to prevent prophecy is Yasharel. A lot of it because of what? Where are they? They're scattered, and they're in wood and stone. So they're trying to, not Ezekiel 37. No, we don't want to waken. No, we don't want them to waken up. But it's going to happen because it was prophesied. So it's going to happen. But the ones that's trying to prevent it, it's sad to say, but the eschatology of Christianity is an error. It's an error. It is not accurate, and it's not going to come to pass. And a lot of people who are caught up in Christianity and Islam are going to be lost. Sad to say, but they're going to be lost because the eschatology, especially Christianity, the eschatology. Now, what do I mean by eschatology? The prophecy of end times. Eschatology, the study of end times. The prophets have already told us what the end is going to be. If you want to know what the end is going to be, go to the prophets. Start reading Isaiah all the way to Zechariah. Well, even Moses was a prophet. Musha was a prophet. So you can read Musha. He was a prophet. King Daud was a prophet. Then you have Isaiah and all the other prophets. if you want to know how this thing's going to end up, that's where you have to go. And so the eschatology of them will get you off skewed, and it's not going to come to pass. Nowhere, when you go back to Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, because we're going to read some. Let's see how much time. I don't have much. We're going to read some, but nowhere in there does it say you're going to die and be citizens in the Shamayim. Nowhere. That is nowhere in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, or the prophets. It's not there. But somebody has told the world that's where they're going. That's where they're going. When they live a good moral life, when they die, they believe in JC. They live a good moral life. When they die, they're going to the Shaman. It's all in our culture. They're going to the pearly gates, going up yonder. What else? What we say a lot of times about our families, or when somebody perishes or they expire, and we say, well, I know they're going to heaven, going to the pearly gates. That's what. Yeah, and the New Jerusalem's coming down on earth, but that's what they say, and so it's so ingrained in us. It's so ingrained in us, but you won't find that in the book. It's just a heathen or Gentile interpretation of a Hebrew book. And when you get a heathen or Gentile interpreting a Hebrew book, then you come up with those kind of dreams and schemes, because that's not really written. So let's go back to Galatians chapter 3, and we were reading 3 and 10. Let's read down a little bit further. We read number 10. We have to understand that what Shaul was talking about was Deuteronomy 27:26. So if anybody asks you about, well, let's go to Galatians, because a lot of people like to go to Galatians. I want to go to Galatians. Let's teach on Galatians, because we ain't under no law. Well, you have to understand what Shaul was talking about, because listen to what he says. And this is another verse they like to use, verse number 11. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of Yahuwah, it is evident, for the just shall live by faith. See there? There you go. Nobody's justified by the law. Oh, wait a minute, time out. Because Shaul says the exact opposite of this. Let's go to Romans chapter 2 and verse number 13. And I'm just trying to give you stuff you can build up your armory with and everything, because we're going to go through this. But he says here, for not the hearers of the law are just before Yahuwah. But who is justified before Yahuwah? But the doers of the law shall be justified, right? So it's not that I hear the law, but the doers of the law shall be justified. He goes on to say, for when the Gentiles, which have not the law, because they weren't given the law from Mount Sinai, do by nature the things contained in the law, these, having not the law, are a law unto themselves. So it becomes a law unto them. There's no sense of having a law if you're not going to keep it. There's no sense. I mean, our city has city code. They develop all this city code. There would be no reason to develop a city code if nobody's going to do it, because then you're going to have anarchy, total confusion, and everything else. So it's not that I just have to hear the law only, but I have to be a doer of the law. Wait a minute, time out. Is that a contradiction? Did we just read a contradiction? Romans 2:13 and Galatians 3:11, isn't that a contradiction? Let's go back to Galatians 3:11, because when you have a contradiction by the same person speaking, then we have to, wait a minute, I got to, either they cancel out or what Shaul is referring to the Romans. He's referring to something different, to the Galatians and everything. But then I have to understand the whole purpose of this book, because Shaul just contradicted himself. He basically contradicted himself. And so what he is dealing with here in Galatians, especially when he's talking about the law and the justification of the law, and again, you have to go back to Genesis, but to get an understanding of what Shaul was talking about, you got to read Genesis chapter 17. Genesis chapter 17, and we're going to go pick up some of that a little later, because there's something else that Shaul says in this same chapter that he kind of throws a curveball. But if I don't understand Genesis, then whatever Shaul says, then, and what Shaul refers to, just like we read in chapter 10, what was he talking about? Deuteronomy? Yeah, he was talking about Deuteronomy 27:26. That's what he was talking about. So he had the Torah right there with him, reading and understanding the Torah to teach to Galatians who were Gentiles. And what he's dealing with, as we go on to see, what he's dealing with, especially about the justification of the law, there was a reason why in Genesis 17, why he made that covenant with Abraham. And before we go to Genesis 17, who knows what Genesis 17 is about? Anybody? Anybody? Without even looking it up? Genesis 17. Anybody know? Anybody in the chat know? I'm going to have to, because I don't have a lot of time to get through this. Huh? No. Huh? He made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis chapter 17 that Shaul is dealing with here in this book. We're going to get to that. But that is a part, because that's throughout Genesis. But we'll get to that. It is in 17. But the overall, what is the main thought in Genesis 17? The covenant that he made with Abraham. What was that covenant? Somebody might know. Nobody said nothing in the chat yet. Okay. Well, go ahead, look it up. I'll let you look it up. Coty Essence says, we got time. Don't get in a hurry. We got time. So, did anybody get it yet? Look it up. This is where we can look it up and see what Genesis 17 is dealing with. Why did he make that covenant with Abraham? What was that covenant, and why did he make that covenant? And maybe that's probably a whole different teaching, a whole different class on that. But there was a covenant that he made with Abraham and his seed. What did you say? In Genesis 17, he's dealing with circumcision. He's dealing with circumcision of Abraham and his seed. And the reason, just to give you a real quick, let you know the reason why. So, there's different reasons for circumcision of the flesh, but there was one main reason. They had to be circumcised before they went where? Into the temple, or before they were able to inherit the land. Before they were to inherit the land or even go into the temple. Because the doorkeeper, because only the males would go into the temple. There was a male court. When you get to Solomon's temple, he has an outer court, he has a female court, and then the court. But in the original one, the only ones who went in the temple were the males. And the only way you could get in there, the doorkeeper had to do what? He had to check to see if you were circumcised. Because there's several reasons. You had the uncleanliness of it, because of the way the skin goes. It was easy for infection and things like that. So it made them clean. But another reason for that, because you had to be clean to get into his temple, to get into his presence, he wanted cleanliness. He didn't want infection. Sin is an infection on you. So he didn't want the infection of sin or infection of the flesh. You had to be clean. But another reason why there had to be circumcision there, because Yasharel looked like all the other nations around them.
Right. That's true.
They looked like all the other nations around them. And they were in the land of where? What flows with milk and honey? The land of Canaan or Canaan. That's where they were. Southwest of Egypt was the land of Canaan or the land of Canaan. Now, why do I say southwest? Real quick. Let's go to Genesis. Right. Genesis, I think it's 13:1. In the 13th chapter. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. So if you look at the continent over there, the water, the Nile and everything, when you look at the map, you think the Nile flows from the Mediterranean on down towards Lake Victoria. Those aren't the original name. That's just the name that the Europeans gave them. But it looks like it goes down to Lake Victoria, right? But it's the opposite. It's flowing from Lake Victoria all the way out to the Mediterranean. So when you look at Egypt there's highlands and it's going north, what we call north, and the water's flowing into the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean's not flowing the Nile into the Lake Virginia, but the exact opposite. So he had to go up out of Egypt, and he went south. So if you look at where Egypt is, which is, and here's another thing about Africa, the continent of Africa, the Saharan has not always been like that. It has not always been like that. It looks very dry, sandy, everything, but it has not always been like that. Anyway, they went south out of Egypt. Now, why do I say west? Now, I can prove where it says south. Why would I say west? Well, you have to keep reading. So you go down in this chapter here, and it talks about how they had to part because, and the land was not able to bear them, this is verse number 6, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt then in the land. These were all people together, right? These were the sons of Ham and the sons of Shem, and they all dwelt together, and you couldn't really tell them apart. The way you could determine who was the seed of Abraham, there were several things that you could determine who was the seed of Abraham. Now, what's one way? Because we just talked about it. He made a circumcision. Because all these other African nations did not circumcise their sons. So Abraham was circumcised and his sons, so that you could tell who was an Israelite or who was a seed of Abraham and who was not through circumcision, okay? And Abraham said unto Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between thy herdmen and my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren. Then look at verse number 9. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Okay? Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. Right, because they already went south. So here I am facing south, and I'm saying, okay, Lot, if you go this way, to my left hand, then I'm going to go to the right. But if you go to the right, then I'm going to go to the left. Whatever direction you take, Lot, I'm going to take the opposite, okay? So let's see what Lot chooses. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahuwah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. As the garden of Yahuwah. As the garden of Yahuwah. Now, when you go over there now, does it look like the garden of Yahuwah? When you look at the Sahara, it doesn't really look like the garden of Yahuwah, does it? Not now. It ain't nothing but sand. and no vegetation and no rain or nothing. So something happened. So Lot lifted up his eyes, and so he says, as the garden of Yahuwah, like the land of Egypt. Notice, like the land of Egypt. But when you look at Egypt now, it don't look like the Garden of Eden, because what he's talking about is the garden. When he says the Garden of Yahuwah, he's talking about the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden was not sand and rocks. That's not, So at one time, it didn't look like it does today. As thou comest unto Zor, then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed. He went east. So if you go southeast out of Egypt, you're going towards the Arab Peninsula, and that's where you're going. So if Lot went southeast, which direction did Abram go? Southwest. He went southwest. So when we start looking for the land, right now they're telling you the Levant is Northeast Africa, or they don't even call it Northeast Africa. It was never called Middle East. Now they call it Middle East or Western Asia. That's what they like to call it. They don't like to refer to it as Africa at all, because if you refer to it as Africa, you have to realize ain't wasn't nothing but Africans back in that day. You're talking about Canaan, because it talks about the Canaanites, the Perizzites. They were all in the land. So so then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from the other. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities in the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. So Sodom was southeast, and Canaan was southwest of Egypt. So it's but why do we believe that the Levant and everything is? That's because they told us that. You're listening to the wrong people. We have people listening to the terrorists over there in Palestine who say they're Jews but are not. They're the synagogue of Satan. But you have people in Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, Protestant Christianity, that believe those are the chosen people, and they don't fulfill prophecy whatsoever. There is a prophecy on them, because he talks about it in Revelation. When you look at Revelations chapter 2 and chapter 3, there is prophecy on those who say they're Jews and they're not. One thing he says about them, he says, it's abomination to say you are a Jew and you're not. That's abomination. And so they claim it, and they're going, and Abba Yah is going to deal with it. So back to chapter 17, where we're dealing with chapter 17. So why did one of the reasons why he circumcised Abram is because going into the land, when they had to go into the land, when we get to Genesis 17, he put circumcision on them because that was a rite of passage into the land. So you're dealing with a land contract and a rite of passage. So when Shaul is dealing with the Galatians, really what he's dealing with, he had to explain to them, if you're going to keep Moses' law as far as circumcision and on the 8th day and everything, you don't even understand what that was for, and you don't have to do that as a Gentile in order to be able to inherit, because we have to get to the inherited part, in order to inherit. Because it was given to Abraham, circumcision was given to Abraham and his seed, because it was a land contract, a land covenant, when you read Genesis 17, to get them into the land. This was repeated when Moses came out of Egypt. In fact, when Zipporah brought his sons to him, the angel was going to get Moses. And so Moses told Zipporah, circumcise my sons. And then she circumcised his sons, and she threw the foreskin at Moses' feet and said, a bloody man thou art to me. That's what you made me circumcise my sons. But they had to be circumcised to go into the land. Another example is in the time of Joshua. In the time of Joshua, because while they were in the wilderness, they had stopped circumcising. After he told them, he gave the example of Moses, but still they stopped. So Most High Yah told Joshua, before you go into the land, you got to circumcise your sons. So they had this big old, they had to circumcise all the men, and then they were able to go in the land because it was a rite of passage into the land. So Shaul knew that, so he's dealing with the Galatians and saying, if you want to, now let's talk about the law, because by doing that circumcision trying to keep the law, that's not going to justify you at all. That's not going to justify you at all, But you can't say that the whole law, or I don't have to do another law because the law doesn't justify me before Yahuwah. It's because people don't understand and they don't want to take the time to deal with what Shaul was dealing with in the book of Galatians. And a lot of times we run from it when all you need is a clarification to understand what Shaul was dealing with in Galatians. Okay, so let's go back to Galatians 3. I think we're at verse number 11, justified, because he does say in Romans that you have to be justified by the law. And somebody else that says that, deals with that, is James. When you look at Jacob's letter to the lost, to those who are scattered abroad, he even says to the 12 tribes scattered abroad, and he starts dealing with all this stuff. Because he talks about if you have faith, because Paul is dealing with faith, but he says if you have faith without works, then your faith is dead, being alone. So he says, you can judge me by my works. You can judge me if I have faith by my works, and I'll judge you by your works. And we're going to see who has faith, because faith without works is dead, being alone. So I can't say I don't have to do any works, or all the works of the law is vain and everything to me. As a Gentile, being circumcised on the 8th day, that is not something that has to be kept by Gentiles in order to have access into the Mashiach. Into the Mashiach, having access into the Mashiach, you don't have to get men don't have to get circumcised in their flesh to have access into the Mashiach, because that's done by faith and actually works obedience as well. Okay? And the law is not of faith, but the man that doeth them shall live in them. Mashiach hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. That's verse number 13. Now, then you have to go back to Deuteronomy. Oh, man, I think it's the 23rd, 20th chapter, somewhere around there. I have to go back and look at it again. It talks about when you hang somebody on the tree, you can't leave them there all night. You're supposed to take them off the tree. But their hanging on the tree is not like we get hung today. It wasn't like that. And even Yahusha, because it says in Acts he was hung on a tree, but they would have these wooden stakes, and they put these wooden stakes in the ground. A lot of times they would nail the person to the stakes like this, his hands and his feet, and they picked up that stake and they drove it in the ground. So he was nailed like this, and his feet, and then the stake. But see, they changed like this, and they made it like this, almost formed it into a man, like it says in Isaiah 44th chapter. They formed it into a man out of wood, which is dealing with the cross. But that cross didn't even come in until Constantine, to the fourth century. Yes.
So that's when they started crucifying people like this?
Yes, because it used to always be like this, because you had those stakes in the ground. They would even burn them on fire, and they used them as lanterns going into the city of Rome. Yeah. He would put them on a stake and then set them on fire and use them as human lights as they went into Rome. I mean, those people were vicious. They were some very vicious people, but that's what they did. All right. So the curse, Yahusha became a curse for us because he was hung on a tree, or that stake was made out of wood. They put him on a stake, and that's how he died. That the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles. Now, see, he's dealing with Gentiles through Yahushua Mashiach, that we might receive the promise of the Ruach through faith. Now, there is more. Here comes another thing. There's more than one promise. There's more than one promise. So when we get into here and we're talking about the promise, we have to look at what promise are you talking about, Shaul? Because there's more than one promise. Just like there's more than one curse, and we have a list of curses, there's also more than one promise. And so he says here that we might receive the promise of the Ruach through faith. So there was a promise that he was going to give him the Ruach, especially in Isaiah the prophet. I think it's chapter 56, but he talks about the spirit or the Ruach that was upon the son, his son. He was going to give it to his people, that same Ruach. So he says the promise of the Ruach, not only was it going to be given to Yasharel, because that was a promise, but he was also going to put the Ruach on Gentiles. So, and then, all right, verse number 15, brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Now, he says, though it be but a man's covenant, because when Yahuwah made a covenant, we don't see anywhere in Torah or anywhere where he makes a covenant with angels. We don't see that. We see him making a covenant with who? Well, we see he made a covenant with Noah, who was a man. He was a man. You know, he made a covenant with Abraham. He was a man. He made a covenant with Yishak, Jacob, and we can go on because he made a covenant with man. The dealings that Yahuwah has with the angels and the Elohims and stuff, we're not privy to a lot of that. All we know is that he sits in the council of the Elohim and they all have to answer to him because Yahuwah is El Elyon, which means the Most High. Now, you wouldn't have to say he's the Most High if there was no other high ones. Why would he be the Most High? There ain't no other high ones. Oh, there are other Elohim, but he sits in the council of Elohim. He's El Elyon. He sits as the Most High. And all of those other Elohim has to answer to him. He even calls them his sons. He even calls them his sons. Yes.
And those ones, they're considered holy, the ones that he sits in his council with.
It depends on what you mean by holy, because...
Like, for instance, I guess I'm assuming he wouldn't be sitting in the council of other gods that wouldn't believe or do the things or follow the things that he abides by, I guess.
Yeah, well, look at Psalms 82. Psalms 82, and I'm going to start with verse number 1. Eloah standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the Elohim. Okay, this is King James, but we can read some other versions. Let's see what it says in the English Standard Version. Eloah has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the Elohim, he holds judgment. So this is not talking about human beings like us. Okay. So and I'm going to go back to the King James, just trying to give it. Sometimes we read in different versions, it helps. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Now he's talking to the Elohim. Now, are you saying that is unholy? Or that is, because so it depends on what your definition of holy and unholy is. Because we don't know how many angels he created. We don't know how many Elohims he created. But we do know that 70 of them are represented here on this Eretz.
I mean, if he's asking how long will they judge unjustly, that's not holy if they're judging unjustly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they should. He's got them on this place, on this plane that's different than humans, you know, and but you know they still do wrong. I guess they can still do wrong. Let me put it this: there was a Elohim in his council when he dealt with King Ahab, because Ahab went to Jehoshaphat and him to go up to war with them, right? And Most High Yah says that's going to be his doom. He's going to die there. And he says, so how can I get them? And what one of the Elohim or spirits said, I'll be a lying spirit in the mouth of all of Ahab's prophets. I'm going to be a lying spirit. And El Elyon, Yahuwah says, okay, go and do it. So was that? He actually sent a Elohim or a spirit that was a lying spirit. So, nobody considered the counsel of Yahuwah, but his purpose was Ahab's going to die. Ahab was not a good king. I mean, it was judgment. Right. I guess that's where I'm going with that. Right. There's other. God, would their God be considered to be part of his council, or is that an automatic? No. Are these gods separate from the gods that like the Native Americans seek or pray to? Now, who is the Elohim or God of this world? Hasatan. And he has other. In fact, a third of the heavenly hosts, those other angels, Elohim, followed him and lost out. So, but the top Elohim under El Elyon was Satan. He was up higher than Michael, the archangel. I mean, he set up at the top. He said, I'm going to be like the Most High. Oh, no, you're not. You're not going to be like El Elyon. There's only one El Elyon. You're not. And all of you, I created all of y'all. So, he got. So, the wrong of Satan was that iniquity was found in him. And that was his doom. Iniquity was found in him. That's what prophecy said. So he had to get put out. And when it says iniquity was found in him, he wanted to exalt himself above El Elyon. That's not happening. That ain't going to happen. You're not going to exalt yourself above the Most High. When he created you. Okay, so he says, how long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah, defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Do we see that going on even in this country now? Because things are going to get worse. Just to let everybody know, things are going to get worse. So, yeah, it's going to get worse, And so we've been preparing ourselves. I should say we've been talking about preparing ourselves, because I heard that for the month of November, they're not giving out those who are getting assistance for food, they're not giving that out in November, next month. Yeah, so people are going to get desperate. They're going to get desperate. I think we can help. I think we can help some people, but I'm not going to help people who rob and steal and But if because some of us might need help, or we might know some in assemblies that might need help, and I was. In my absence and out in Arizona, and it was pressed upon me that the house of Yah, because and he was dealing with me, where did you come from? It's like, where did you come from? And I know my background, I know where I came from, apostolic Pentecostal. No, my background is apostolic Pentecostal, so I'm dealing with Yahuwah, but the house of Yah here is going to be a place that for people who are like us, who come out of that curse of wood and stone, and they're going to need help, they're going to need guidance, they're going to need direction, they're going to need love bands, they're going to need. The one thing they don't need is being judges on them. Judges, being judgmental. Because Yahusha says, don't you judge unless you want to be judged. Because he says in Matthew, the 7th chapter, I think he says, judge not lest you be judged. So if anybody goes into judgment, now, if you're going to take me into judgment, now you got to be ready to go into judgment. So let's go into judgment together. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't want to be judged. Well, then don't judge me. Yes.
That reminds me of the lady that the Pharisees brought the lady in, and she was accused of adultery, and he's like, okay, so who of you guys is...
Who doesn't have sin?
Yeah, go cast first stone.
Right, right. You know, you want to judge, then if you ain't got no sin, you cast. And everybody had to look and say, no, we know sin. I ain't gonna say. I mean, you'll be a fool to say you don't have sin. And Yahuchanan says, if anybody says they don't have no sin, they're a liar. And you just sinned because you lied. So, all right. Defend the poor, fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked. And this is where, like Coach said, we might have to step up and do, because we've been preparing. We've got a room of preparation here. We need to organize it. We need to get in there and get that. We got it. Yeah, that's not a storage. It's a storage room for food. It's not a storage room for all your equipment and everything else. Well, we're gonna have to find someplace else, because we do have a room of preparation, and we might have to help people. We might have to cook some meals.
That's not going to be a problem. Me personally, I think it's going to be a mental problem. A lot of people are going to just go crazy. And if we don't know,
When people get desperate, they're gonna, yeah.
when they start listening to all the news and start getting fear and start getting afraid and shaky and upset, and they're not
Right.
going to be able to deal with it. It's going to be a hard thing to deal with.
And then you got to be careful, because you just can't trust anybody coming in here, because somebody might have that mindset to come in and rob and hold at
Right,
gunpoint.
right.
And what if you got children here, because their parents or grandparents are here, and then now you're in an unsafe situation. So
Right.
I don't know if I want to advertise,
I know it.
we can bring it to you, outdoor in public,
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know
have
about
it
bringing people
outside.
here.
Yeah, not maybe just outside the building.
No,
In
a drop-off point,
Yeah.
or something, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think the strong are going to be attacked. Those who you think are strong are going to be attacked mentally. We think we're strong,
Right.
but when we start seeing things really bad happening and stuff, you're not as strong as you probably think you are.
Right.
You should be able to have somebody call and talk to you, like, I'm afraid. I just seen something bad just happen on the street, and that was crazy bad. I just don't know how strong our minds are.
Yeah.
Are we prayed up to be strong?
We have to be ready, and we've been talking about preparedness and readiness, and we've talked about we move in faith and not fear. So, I mean, that's how we have to move, and because faith is a currency.
Okay, so my concern, I've been thinking about this a couple days too, is that with my job, I take people to the grocery store, and sometimes they'll have me take them to different places. My concern is, I have things in my back seat, somebody put their groceries in my back seat, and my concern is that someone is going to attack me, or my clients, and I'm dealing with people that are older and aren't,
Right.
So I'm not
Right.
sure how to, I have mace in my car, I have pepper spray in my car. I'm not sure that's even good enough.
It might be a barrier that might get you out of there real quick. It's just a deterrent that'll help you get in my car, get out of here. Because all you need is a few minutes to, get out. So it could be useful, but I would inform your superiors and let them know, and they're going to know. I mean, it's going to be on the news. Everybody's going to know, and they should take precautions. As your employer, they should take precautions.
Well, and the other thing too, I was thinking about, today I had one of my clients, and I went and got in his medicine, and then I had to go pick him up somewhere else, and I had his medicine
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how to deal with that. Maybe I need like get a black tarp to put over the stuff, or
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Just take precautions, and consider your safety. Be prayed up. Talk to your employers. Take the steps that you can take, and then let Yah do the rest.
My truck's not big enough for all of them. Like I go with this one lady, and she literally buys enough stuff to fill up my entire back seat.
Mm-hmm.
I can't fit all that in my trunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to do what you can, but we have to be prepared, and I think we are preparing ourselves. They even said, I heard somebody say that, they'll be going through neighborhoods, and if they smell somebody cooking out, they're going to invite themselves over to get some food because they'll be able to smell it, and they're going to go to where the smell is, Oh yeah, in our neighborhood, you can smell when somebody's grilling. The wind blows the right direction. Somebody's grilling. But it is going to get worse, and we're going to be dealing with desperate people because the time is desperate. But we just have to prepare ourselves in the ways and capacities that we can, that's within our reach, what we can do. And we're going to have to be here. We're going to have to be here for others, and so. I know where I come from, and there's going to be others that are going to come out because the prophecy is that they got to come out of that. So you're going to have others that come out. And so we're going to have to be a landing point for them, when they come out. So anyway, that's something that was dealing with me. So you look at all of this, and he says, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. That's about right now, ain't it? I mean, the foundation of it's really out of course. I have said, ye Elohim, and all of you children of the Most High. All of them, he sits in the council of the Elohim. All of them are children of El Elyon. That's why you have to make a difference between Elohim and El Elyon, because Elohim is not El Elyon. El is singular. Elyon is highest. It's the highest position. So El Elyon, that's why we say the Most High. The Most High, because what in English, in Hebrew, we're saying El Elyon, but the Most High. And he says, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. And we see, when it talks about the princes, we can see when Gabriel was sent to deliver a message to Daniel, and he was held up for about 21 days, he called Michael, because the prince of Persia, or that Elohim that was over Persia, withstood Gabriel. And he called on Michael to assist him. So Prince of Persia must have been one of those really strong ones to hold off Gabriel. Must have been a pretty strong one. But then Michael comes and does his thing on him, and he's because right now the highest one up there is Michael. All right. Arise, O Elohim, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. So Yahuwah is going to inherit all nations, because all of these other nations, they're going to have to come to Yasharel and to our El Elyon. He's got Yasharel as an inheritance, but his next inheritance is he's going to have all nations. Yeah. Right now he has Yasharel, but he's going to have all nations in the end. Yes?
No, I was going to say, just the turnaround, like now, Africa is gaining more and more independence, but if that's where he's taking us as the final into the wilderness, and then they eventually all have to turn, that would just be a sight to see how it was just dashed and put down and raped and deprived, or taking all his resources, and this, that, and the other, and then for everybody to have to turn back to this continent, if that's where it is, to this continent where was just taken advantage of, and now they're going to it for the resources.
Yeah, he's going to turn things right side up. We say right now things are upside down. So he's going to turn things right side up because that's where it all started.
Yeah.
It all started there, and then that's where he's going to establish his kingdom. And I believe that's where the New Jerusalem is going to come out of Shamaim. It's going to come down. I think that's where, but it's going to be a new what? Because the city that they call heaven, but the city of Shamaim is prepared for as a bride for her bridegroom. But that city where the pearly gates is and everything, that's not until after 1,000 years of peace on this present earth. That's a long ways off. You know, what's coming upon us is the millennial reign of our Messiah. That's the new age that's coming. This age is coming to an end, and the next age is the millennial reign of our Messiah. And those who are born again of the Ruach and immersed in water, and we know hopefully we can get, but those who are born again will be able to reign with him for 1,000 years. Now there is going to be Yasharel. You'll have Yasharel. You'll have people living and dying. But if you want to reign forever, then you're going to have to, like Yahusha said, marvel not, or verily, verily, ye must. It's inevitable. You have to. And when he said that, ye must be born again in order to see the kingdom, in order to enter into the kingdom. And people think that's in the Shamaim, that's heaven. That's not what he said. That's not, you're not going to Shamaim. The kingdom's coming here. And so if you're born again, then you'll be able to live and reign with him in that millennial reign. Then you're going to have a new heaven and a new earth. There's going to be different resurrections too. It's not all one resurrection, but you're going to have different resurrections. And the way, and I know this is out there, it's out there, but just listen, because it deals with 2nd Esdras, which is a powerful, and Esdras is, sometimes I read it, just blows my mind. But in 2nd Esdras, he does talk about the earth is going to have a certain number at a time, and then it's cycled. So, it's because he asked him, well, how come they don't have it all at once? He says, he compares it to a woman, and let's say a woman has, like my mom had 14 kids. Did she have them all at once? No, she didn't have them all at once, but everyone in its order, So he says the earth is the same way, everybody that is everybody that has been born and died, and those who are promised eternal life, it can only handle so many people, and it handles it in its cycle. But anyway, I'm still trying to get more of an understanding on that. But 2nd Esdras, because I know you was reading 2nd Esdras, weren't you? Y'all was reading 2nd Esdras? It's yeah, and even reading Enoch. I mean, there's a lot of material to read that they've kept from us that it really expands your knowledge, your understanding. It'll just expand it. But we'll look at that sometime in 2nd Esdras. But no, back to Galatians where we were before my time is up. And I'll probably deal more of this on Shabbat too. Okay, verse 14, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Yahushua Mashiach, that we might receive the promise of the Ruach through faith. Now listen to verse number 15. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, and that's because Abiyah made a covenant with man. So it's a man's covenant. Yet, if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Yet, if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. But now, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse number 1. and verse number 2. Now therefore hearken, O Yasharel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you for to do, that ye may live and go in and possess the land which Yahuwah your Eloah of your fathers giveth you. Now listen, verse number 2. Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it. You're not supposed to add unto or diminish. And Shaul says, now if it's confirmed, no man can disannul or take away, and no man can add to it. All right? That ye may keep the commandments of Yahuwah your Eloah, which I command you. All right? Now, so let's go. This is where he got it from. He got it from here. So he says, if it's confirmed, so how do we know it was confirmed? There you go. So let's go to Romans. I'm going to read Romans 15 and 8, then we'll go back to Galatians, what he's dealing with. Now I say that Yahushua Mashiach was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of Eloah or Yahuwah. To do what? To confirm the promises made unto the fathers. Now, what he's saying here, now let me say this. Anybody believes in JC, Yahusha, Yeshua, Yahawashai, Yahshua, Yahoshua. I was trying to get all those. People call him Yahoshua. People call him Yeshua, Yahusha, Yahawashai. I mean, and some people call him JC. But if you believe that Yahushua Mashiach or JC came and fulfilled his ministry, if you believe that, then what else did he do? By your belief, what are you saying? You're believing or admitting that he did what? He died for us, but what did he do in that? It's right there in verse number 8. What did he do? He confirmed. That's your confirmation. The confirmation of everything that Yahuwah spoke about, Abraham, Yishak, Jacob, the covenant, the promises, the inheritance, because we have to look at inheritance because Galatians 3 deals with inheritance. But all of that was confirmed by Yahusha. And the world calls him JC. He confirmed it. So now, let's go back to Galatians 3 and 15. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, because he made a covenant. Yet, if it be confirmed. Now, so can we answer that question? Was it confirmed? Yes, it was. So if it's confirmed, nobody can add and nobody can subtract. They can't add or subtract from what? All of the promises that he made to Abraham. You can't disannul. Disannul means to make it of none effect. To just make it meaningless or it doesn't matter. You disannul. Or when somebody gets married and then what do they go through? They go through a ceremony, but then if they want to get a divorce or something, what do they call it? Yeah, you do away with it. Yeah. NDA or prenuptial. Yeah. But this one is he says, now, if it's been confirmed, and we believe by what he wrote in Romans 15 and 8, that Yahusha came to be a minister, right? And then he confirmed all the promises, because there's more than one promise. Promises. He confirmed the promises that were made unto our fathers. Fathers who? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Abraham, Yishak, Jacob. So if anybody believes in Yahusha, JC, whatever you want to call him, then you have to believe, your simple belief in him is confirming that everything that all the promises he made to Abraham, he's going to fulfill them. So if anybody is a Christian or whatever and say that, well, what he promised Abraham, that's not important to me, the inheritance and all that, all I want to do is go to heaven. I want to go to heaven. You've totally missed it. You missed everything. You've been hoodwinked because the kingdom is going to be here and everything. So there's some other promises that he promised Abraham, and we got to get to that because my time is up really. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as to many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Mashiach. Now, Shaul says a lot of things there, but we don't have time to get into them tonight, but we'll talk about them on the Shabbat. This is where we're going to pick up on Shabbat. Galatians 3:16. Now to Abraham and his seed. Okay, good. You recognize that. To Abraham and his seed were the promises made. More than one. Promises, right? He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Mashiach. Now, we had to go into that. Because right there in those two sentences, the first sentence is, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is the Mashiach. Two sentences. But in those two sentences, he's dealing with two different things. He's dealing with two different things in those two sentences. And many of us, we've already read it, but we're going to read it again, and hopefully you can see where Shaul got it from, because he's dealing with two different things. Because how many promises are there? Was there a promise or was there promises? Promises, plurality. So it wasn't just one promise, it was promises. And so when he's dealing with seed and seeds and thy seed and Mashiach, well, the only way you're going to know what he's talking about, you have to go back and read Genesis. So we're going to go back on the Shabbat. Well, I'll pick this up on Shabbat. But we'll go back and we'll start dealing with this verse here and go on down, because especially in the next verse, there is such a severance. You have to see it. You have to see it. Because if you don't, then you're just, and that's why it's easy to follow the narrative of the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. It's so easy to follow that narrative, because just like we're dealing earlier in this, when you're talking about, the law and the curse and all the curses and stuff, if you don't know that there's more than one curse. There is a curse on the Torah, but as soon as you get scattered to the four corners of where he scattered Israel, you're not going to be able to keep it by the letter, but that's okay because he became a curse for you. But there are still curses that is upon his people, and those curses will not be lifted until he gathers them from the four corners and he makes them a nation again. And it's going to happen fast because it was prophesied. In Isaiah. Okay, let's look at it real quick. Do I have time? Isaiah 66. He deals with it. Verse 7. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her birth came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who have seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, saith Yahuwah? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy Elohim? Remember what he says in the 37th chapter of Isaiah? The children are brought to the birth, and there's not enough strength to bring forth. Yes?
What is this? Who and what? Where is this verse? The context, explain it first. Like the she, who is before she who?
Okay.
Is that Yasharel?
You're talking about Yasharel, which is the woman.
And we're talking about what in layman's terms?
So, when you're talking about the woman giving birth, you go to Revelation chapter 12, just real quick, because we don't have time, okay? Yeah. So, it's the first, when the man-child first came, it says before her pain came, she came of a child, right? The Mashiach. But right now, Yasharel scattered to the four corners. Right now, can you see in your mind how Yasharel, within a very short period of time, once we know who Yasharel is, in a very short period of time, all of a sudden, they're going to become a nation and rule the world. Can you fathom that?
Yes.
I can't. I can't. When I know where Yasharel is, scattered to the four corners, and you understand the powers of these nations today, how is he going to do it? How is Yahuwah going to bring about a nation? Because we're coming to the end of the age. Even in Ezra, it says that Esau is the end, but Jacob is the beginning of the new. And that's about where we're at. We're getting ready. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of an age. But it's going to happen so quick. What Isaiah is saying here in verse number 8, it's going to happen so quick. Now, when the man-child came, the woman wasn't in pain. You can say they were in the captivity of Rome. They were in their own land, but it was Rome that was ruling over them. But they didn't have the birthing pain like Yasharel is going to have. Because, see, it's going to get tough. It's going to get to the point where Yasharel is going to call out to and he's going to gather his people. Because that was prophesied that he's going to do that. But birth pains are going to come.
Now, if you go to Matthew 24, it explains that all these things are going to happen, but it's not the end. It's going to get worse. But when you just said birth pains, as women travailing, just as she's travailing, all this stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, but what it's saying is that Yasharel is going to go through some birth pains.
Right. And didn't they already do that back in 1800?
Yeah, they went through some Jacob's trouble. But even now, and we can see the pattern starting to set up. Even in this country and even other countries. See, the news that they give us is how they want us to think. When you look at these main news outlets, they don't tell you what's really going on around the world and all these other nations and stuff.
But there are true stuff on, if you go on YouTube, there's some truth.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not media. Some of this stuff is real life.
yeah, I mean, you have to seek it and search for it. Yeah, but there's some outlets that you might get some news that you don't get from the main legacy or news. Isn't that called it? The legacy news, media, legacy media news. I mean, yes.
Even though I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, none of us do, but the reason why I believe that so strongly, I kid you not, and I like to listen to things as I'm getting ready for work, different people's point of views, whatever. I have never seen as many, not black people, when we first woke up, it was videos black people were doing back in 2016. And within the last
Yeah.
It is white people, and they're saying that Yahusha is black, and the black people are the children of Israel. It's not the people. And I'm like, oh my! Every time now when I go on YouTube, that is who is speaking.
Yeah.
That's why I believe it, because
Yeah.
they are warning people now. It used to just be like our own kind, but now I'm seeing other people that's waking Yasharel.
Because
they're turning back to Yahuwah and not God and Jesus
right.
themselves.
Because it says in Romans chapter 8 that the world is waiting for the manifestations of the sons of Yahuwah. So we're on that verge.
But we also have to be careful who these people are and what they're saying, because AI is really taking over.
This isn't
We
AI.
really got to be
Yeah, this
careful.
isn't AI. Like,
We don't
these,
know.
no, I know. Yeah. Like the video where people are falling through like porches and stuff. I mean, you can tell that's AI, or the voices, it doesn't match the lips. I'll have to show you some of these videos.
We got to be careful because he said, read not to see.
But they're not trying to. But they're not trying to get you to follow them. They're telling you that Yahuwah is the one true God, and Yasharel are the black people who's receiving these curses. Like they're saying the same thing he's saying, but not from a teacher Zakim perspective.
I know, I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen them, but I don't know.
They're not
Yeah.
trying to get you to believe a lie. They're trying to wake people up, like come up out of Christianity kind of thing.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought up Isaiah right here, the reason why I brought this up is because we're going to go back to Galatians and because we have to deal with seeds, what he was talking about, and we have to look at what the promises and the inheritance is. Because when you read the rest of Galatians 3, Paul goes into the inheritance. The inheritance is not going up to heaven. That's not the inheritance. So we have to, that's why I brought this up, because it's going to happen quick. People are going to say, can a nation be born at once? That's impossible. Who ever heard such a thing? A nation born at once? Who ever heard that? I mean, how long did it take for this nation they've been over here for hundreds of years, but they got their day of independence when? 1776. Next year is 250 years. But I mean, it took them a while to get, because they actually had to break from England. They had to break from the throne or the crown of England. They had to break from that war and everything to break from that. And they became a nation, but not overnight. United States of America did not come a nation overnight. But what he's saying here is, boom, in a day, they're going to rise up and be a nation. What? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, where did this come from? You know, who's heard such a thing? And the reason why I say that is because when you look at Galatians, as we go through that, Paul deals with, when he says seed, he's dealing with different, he picks out some, we'll look at it in Genesis. He picks something out and he says that's it, but he doesn't use the rest of it. So when you look at Galatians 3 and what was it, 15, 16? When you look at that, you only think of one thing. Galatians 3:16. When you look at that, you only think of one thing. But there's more to it. Paul extrapolates one thing out, but there was more that we need to be exposed to, because when you get down to even verse number 18, I mean, we're going to look at 17 and 18, because in 18 he starts to deal with what in 18? The inheritance. And I'm just going to drop this out there. Yasharel can't get the inheritance till they become a nation. And he gets into that. He gets into that. Yes.
That makes sense because we have to be proven. We have to get rid of the rebels and the other things so that the nation can function, following the laws. Like you said, you can't have a nation without laws.
Yeah.
So people have to follow those laws.
Right. And even a lot of our laws they got from our covenant book, our book of covenant. A lot of the laws they have on the books, they got from our book. So you need that law to have an established nation. And he even says in Deuteronomy chapter 7, other nations are going to look at you and say, a wise and understanding people. All we had to do was follow Yahuwah's, just follow his instructions. The world will go say, man, y'all are wise and understanding people, you know. But we've been distracted to where nobody wants to read the law. We've been distracted because we think it's a curse. Wait a minute, no. We have to understand what Yahuwah's talking about when he says curse, because there's more than one curse. Because as long as Yasharel is scattered to the four corners into every nation, that's a curse. That's a curse, you know. So, and then you're going to serve wood and stone. That's a curse, which has nothing to do with what he gave them on Mount Sinai. It's because of their disobedience. This is what's going to happen to you. Okay, questions, comments? Well, remind me, Galatians 3:16, that's where we're going to start on the Shabbat, Galatians 3:16. All right, so any questions or comments out there? We'll give them a minute or so. And I was trying to get on our other platform. I'm here on Facebook trying to see if there's anything. But on the other platform, I was just trying to see if there was any questions or anything. But we'll, not that I can answer all the questions. I'm going to say that out front. There might be some I can answer. But, you know, we'll go to Torah, we'll do some studying, and we'll try to come up with the answer. All right? All right. So with that being said, we're going to say shalom. We're closing this out. Say shalom. We'll be back on the Shabbat. Most High willing. And unless this place is tore down and destroyed, which I don't think it will, we'll be here on the Shabbat. Hallelujah. All right. I'm going to say shalom.